The night was heavy, the air damp with the kind of silence that only a busy city could create when the traffic finally slowed, and the stars tried to peek through layers of smog and neon light. Maya Johnson, a 16-year-old girl who carried herself with quiet strength, walked carefully along the cracked sidewalk, her backpack heavy with books from the community center where she had just finished tutoring younger children. She often stayed late, not because she had to, but because she loved seeing the smiles on the children's faces when a math problem finally made sense, or when they read their first full sentence without stumbling. Maya's life had never been easy. Her father had passed away when she was a child. Her mother had left long before that, and now she lived with her grandmother in a small apartment that always smelled faintly of lavender soap and fried chicken. Money was always short, but love was plenty, and that was enough to keep her going. She never expected her walk home that night would change not only her life, but the life of one of the most powerful men in the city. As she turned the corner onto a quieter street, she noticed a boy about her age, maybe slightly older, leaning against a lamppost. At first she thought he was just resting, maybe waiting for someone, but then she saw the way his knees buckled, the way his body trembled, and before she could react, he collapsed onto the pavement. Maya's heart pounded as she rushed to his side, her backpack sliding off her shoulder. His face was pale, too pale, and his lips carried a faint bluish tint. She pressed her ear to his chest, terrified by how faint his heartbeat felt, as though it could vanish at any moment. Panic gripped her, but instead of running away, she dug into his pocket, searching for identification, desperate to find any clue about who he was. Her fingers closed around a sleek leather wallet, and inside, along with crisp bills and shiny cards, was a business card with a name that made her breath catch. Alexander Pierce. She had seen that name on billboards in the news. He was the billionaire who owned half the buildings downtown, a man untouchable, unreachable, and far removed from people like her. But this boy on the ground fighting for air was his son. Her fingers shook as she dialed the number printed on the card, every ring dragging on like a lifetime. When the line clicked, a deep, commanding voice answered, the kind of voice that belonged to someone used to being obeyed. "This is Alexander Pierce." For a moment Maya almost hung up, overwhelmed by the weight of who she was speaking to, but the sight of the boy lying unconscious pushed her words forward in a rush. "Please, you don't know me. I found your son. He's on the street. He collapsed. He's not waking up. You need to come quickly." Her voice cracked as she spoke, but there was no mistaking the urgency. Silence followed for a beat, and then the voice on the other end grew sharp. "Where are you?" he demanded, and Maya quickly described the street corner, her hands trembling as she brushed the boy's hair back from his forehead, whispering softly to him as though her words might anchor him to life until help arrived. Within minutes, the quiet of the street was broken by the roar of a sleek black car that came to a screeching halt. From it emerged a tall man in a tailored suit, his presence commanding the space around him. Alexander Pierce was every inch the man the newspapers described, powerful, sharp, intimidating, but as his eyes fell on the boy lying motionless on the ground, the mask of control shattered. "Nathan," his voice cracked, his knees hitting the pavement as he reached for his son, his hands trembling as he touched his face. For the first time in his life, the billionaire who had conquered industries and crushed competitors looked powerless, like any other father desperate to save his child. He looked up at Maya, his eyes filled with questions and fear. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice raw. Maya swallowed hard and whispered, "My name's Maya. I couldn't just leave him." Those words hung in the air, simple but powerful, and for reasons he didn't yet understand, they would stay with Alexander for a long time. The ambulance came, lights flashing, and Nathan was rushed to the hospital. Maya thought that would be the end of it, that her part was over once she had handed him back to his family. She didn't expect to find herself sitting in a cold waiting room, her hands folded tightly in her lap, as Alexander paced the floor with restless energy. Doctors explained that Nathan had an undiagnosed heart condition, something silent and dangerous that had suddenly flared. Alexander, a man who had always solved problems with money, realized that this was one thing his billions couldn't fix instantly. For the first time, he was helpless, forced to wait and pray like everyone else. Maya stayed, though she didn't know why. Perhaps it was the memory of her father, the helpless nights she had sat in hospitals praying he would recover, the way hope clung stubbornly to her heart even when the odds were against her. She couldn't bring herself to walk away. When Nathan finally woke, pale but breathing, the first words he managed to whisper weren't for his father, but for the girl who had stayed. "Thank you, Maya," he said softly, his eyes meeting hers with quiet gratitude. That moment was the beginning of a bond none of them expected. Nathan, fragile from his illness, found comfort in Maya's presence, and she visited often, telling him stories of her neighborhood, of her grandmother's cooking, of the children she tutored who dreamed of becoming more than the world expected of them. Nathan listened with wide eyes, realizing for the first time how small his world of privilege had been compared to the resilience and strength of people like her. Alexander, meanwhile, struggled. He didn't understand this girl, didn't understand why she cared so much, why she kept showing up. In his world, people only stayed if they wanted something. Yet when he watched Nathan laugh again, smile again, in Maya's company, he saw something money could never buy. But the outside world was not kind. When the media discovered Maya's visits, rumors exploded. Headlines painted her as a schemer, a girl from the wrong side of town trying to latch onto a billionaire's son. Maya felt humiliated. Whispers followed her even in her community, and she wondered if maybe she should stay away. Nathan begged her not to. "You're the only one who makes me feel like myself," he told her, his voice cracking. "Not a billionaire's son, just me." The biggest test came when Nathan collapsed again one evening, this time in Maya's presence. Fear flooded her, but instead of freezing, she acted. She remembered the CPR lessons she had learned at the community center, the ones she thought she'd never use. Her hands pressed against his chest, her breath filling his lungs, and she prayed with every beat that he would live. By the time the paramedics arrived, Nathan was breathing again. Alexander rushed in moments later, his face pale with terror, only to see Maya standing there, her clothes rumpled, her hands trembling, but her eyes steady. She had saved his son again. That night Alexander pulled her aside, his voice softer than she had ever heard. "I misjudged you, Maya. I thought money could protect my son. I was wrong. You've done more for him than I ever could." Maya looked at him, her voice quiet but firm. "Sometimes all someone needs is love. Not money, not power. Just love." Her words pierced him deeper than he cared to admit, because he knew she was right. For years, he had built walls of wealth and power around himself and his son, believing that money could shield them from pain. But it hadn't. What had saved Nathan wasn't his fortune. It was kindness from a girl who had nothing to gain. From that moment on, things began to change. Alexander, inspired by Maya, decided to use his wealth differently. He funded a new community center in her neighborhood, naming it after his late wife, hoping to give other children the same opportunities Maya had fought for. Nathan, recovering slowly, began volunteering with her, tutoring kids and discovering a sense of purpose he had never known. Maya gained more than just gratitude. She gained a family she never expected, and Alexander found something money had never given him: humility, perspective, and a deeper kind of love. And so, what began with a desperate phone call on a lonely street became a story of courage, compassion, and transformation. Maya's simple words, "I couldn't just leave him," became the foundation of a new chapter in all their lives. A reminder that even in a world divided by wealth and poverty, privilege and struggle, one act of kindness could bridge the gap and change everything. Too closing for YouTube video, and that, my friends, is the story of how a young girl's courage and kindness changed the life of a billionaire and his son forever. If this story touched your heart, I would love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in Maya's place? Please share your feelings in the comments below, because your voice matters here. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Be Kind Always for more inspiring and emotional stories that remind us of the power of humanity. And remember, even the smallest act of kindness could be the miracle someone else is waiting for.